Hello, this is Anime Octopus, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Here, we explore alternate storylines, hidden possibilities, and creative twists within the anime worlds we love. Today's fanfic takes a different path through the shinobi world and asks a powerful question. What if Naruko formed the strongest Jinchūriki alliance? In the original story, the Jinchūriki were feared, isolated, and often treated as weapons rather than people. But what if someone changed that fate? What if Naruko chose to bring them together instead of letting them suffer alone? An alliance of the world's most powerful hosts could reshape the balance of power, challenge the hidden villages, and redefine what it truly means to carry a tailed beast. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The content on this channel is created for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. With that said, let's begin the story. The Kazekage nodded slowly at the Tsuchikage's thoughtful words. The room had grown quiet again, though the quiet was now full of curiosity rather than tension. Yes, he said calmly. They all share something important. Each person in those photographs has shown a rare and unusual ability. Not an ability meant for battle, but something far more interesting. The Raikage crossed his arms, still frowning. Then speak clearly. The Kazekage gestured toward the pictures. These individuals, young or old, have each shown a special connection to the natural energy of the world. A calm awareness of it. In the deserts of my land, we have begun to notice it more often. And recently, a young girl from Konoha has demonstrated this gift in a remarkable way. The Hokage looked up with interest. A girl? He asked. The Kazekage nodded. Yes. Her name is Naruko. At the mention of the name, the Hokage's expression softened slightly. He knew exactly who the Kazekage meant. Naruko was a lively young girl from Konoha with bright golden hair that often stuck out in every direction no matter how hard she tried to comb it. She loved exploring the village, greeting people loudly, and practicing her ninja skills whenever she could. But what truly made Naruko special was her kindness and determination. The Kazekage continued, during a recent visit from our traveling scholars, they witnessed Naruko sitting beneath a large tree near the training fields. She was not practicing techniques or competing with others. She was simply sitting quietly, watching the wind move through the leaves. The Mizukage raised an eyebrow. That sounds like something many children do. Perhaps, the Kazekage replied. But the scholars noticed something unusual. The wind around her seemed to move gently, almost as if it were greeting her. The leaders exchanged glances. In my land, the Kazekage explained, we have old stories about people who can sense the balance of nature. People who listen before they act. Naruko seems to have that gift. The Hokage leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. That sounds like her, he said with a small smile. Naruko has always had a big heart. She sometimes rushes ahead, but she also cares deeply for the people around her. The Tsuchikage studied the photographs again. So you gathered these pictures because you believe these people share the same rare connection? Yes, the Kazekage said. And many of them are still children. That is why I called this meeting. The Raikage's expression softened slightly as he looked at the photograph of his younger brother. You're saying they may grow into something important. Not warriors, the Kazekage clarified gently. Guides. People who help the villages understand each other better. The Mizukage smiled thoughtfully. Children who grow up learning to listen to the world around them might also learn to listen to other people. The room grew quiet again, but this time the silence felt warm and hopeful. The Hokage gathered the photographs and looked at Naruko's picture. In it, she was grinning widely, her eyes bright with excitement. She dreams of becoming a great ninja, the Hokage said. But more than that, she wants everyone in the village to smile. The Kazekage nodded. Then perhaps she will become something even greater. Far away in Konoha, Naruko was running across the training field, laughing as she chased a paper kite caught in the breeze. She had no idea that leaders from many lands were discussing her future. All she knew was that the wind felt friendly that day, and she ran faster, reaching out to catch the kite as it danced through the sky. When she finally caught it, she held it up proudly and shouted to her friends nearby. Look! I got it! Her friends cheered, and Naruko laughed with them, her bright voice echoing through the village. And though none of them realized it yet, small moments like these were already helping build a future where the villages of the world could stand together in friendship. The Mizukage leaned back in his chair, his calm expression hiding a sharp mind at work. Humph. Right. And tell me what it comes in for me and my village, Kazekage Dono. For a moment the room fell silent. The great leaders of the hidden villages watched the Kazekage carefully. The Kazekage folded his hands together on the table. What it brings, he said quietly, is stability. The Tsuchikage raised an eyebrow. Stability? Yes, the Kazekage continued. If the children grow up believing the world fears them, they may begin to fear the world in return. But if they meet others like themselves, if they learn they are not alone, then perhaps they will grow up understanding one another rather than resenting one another. The Raikage grunted thoughtfully. Humph. So you're saying if the hosts of the tailed beasts become friends, they might keep the peace instead of starting trouble. Something like that, the Kazekage replied. The leader of Takigakure nodded slowly. The picture of the young girl from his village rested in front of him on the table. She looked so small in the photograph. Children carrying such enormous power. Sarutobi, the Hokage, stared quietly at one particular photograph. A blonde child with bright eyes and a wide smile. Naruko. The girl from the hidden leaf. Unlike most of the other pictures, this one showed a child who looked cheerful rather than lonely. Naruko stood in the middle of a training field, her hair tied messily behind her head, one hand raised in an enthusiastic wave toward the camera. Sarutobi sighed quietly. She is still so young, he thought. He remembered how Naruko ran through the streets of Konoha with endless energy, greeting people with cheerful confidence even when some villagers avoided her. Despite the whispers and the distance others sometimes kept, the girl still smiled as brightly as the sun. The Hokage looked back toward the Kazekage. You believe bringing them together will help them? I do, the Kazekage answered simply. The Tsuchikage chuckled softly. Well, I suppose a group of powerful children making friends sounds better than a group of powerful children feeling lonely. The Raikage crossed his arms. My brother would probably like the idea. And Yugito might finally have someone her age to talk to. The Mizukage tapped the table thoughtfully. You are suggesting a gathering where the hosts can simply be children? Yes, the Kazekage replied. No battles. No missions. Just time to talk, play, and understand one another. For a moment no one spoke. Then Sarutobi slowly nodded. Very well, the Hokage said. If this truly helps them grow into kind and balanced shinobi, then the hidden leaf will participate. The Raikage nodded next. Kumo agrees. The Tsuchikage shrugged. Iwa will send our two. All eyes turned toward the Mizukage. He remained silent for a moment longer before finally sighing. Very well. Kirigakure will cooperate. The leader of Takigakure smiled with relief. Then it is settled. The Kazekage gathered the photographs again. These children will meet once a year, he said. They will train together, learn together, and perhaps become friends. Far away in the Hidden Leaf village, Naruko Uzumaki was completely unaware of the serious meeting taking place about her. At that moment she was racing across a training field, laughing as she tried to balance on the top of a wooden post. Hey! Watch this! She called proudly. She wobbled. Her arms flailed. And a second later she tumbled into the soft grass with a surprised yelp. Naruko lay there for a moment staring up at the bright blue sky. Then she started laughing. I almost had it that time. She jumped back to her feet with her usual determination. Naruko had a simple dream. She wanted to become a great ninja one day. A ninja who protected everyone and made the village proud. But soon, whether she realized it or not, Naruko would meet other children who carried burdens just like hers. Children from distant villages. Children who, like her, held extraordinary power inside them. And in the years to come, those meetings would grow into something unexpected. Friendships. The tall windows of the meeting hall let in warm afternoon sunlight. It shone across the long table where the leaders of the villages sat together. Papers were neatly stacked, teacups rested on small saucers, and several photographs lay in the center of the table. One of those photographs showed a cheerful blonde child with bright eyes and whisker-like marks on her cheeks. Her name was Naruko Uzumaki. Kazekage-sama folded his hands calmly. As I explained earlier, Mizukage Dono, the benefit of our idea should be clear. If the children who carry these special powers grow up knowing one another, they will feel less alone. When villages understand each other better, there is less fear. The Mizukage leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. Humph. You speak of friendship as if it were a strategy. Sometimes, the Kazekage replied with a small smile, friendship is the best strategy. For a moment the room grew quiet. Then the leader of Takigakure nodded first. I agree, he said kindly. Children who carry such responsibilities deserve companions who understand them. If they learn together, they will grow stronger in spirit. The Raikage scratched his chin thoughtfully. Well, he said after a moment, Kirabai will probably be excited to meet new friends. And Yugito has always been curious about the world outside our village. All right. Count us in. Across the table, the Tsuchikage chuckled softly. My, she said. Everyone is being very serious today. But I think the idea is charming. A summer camp where the children can train, play games, and learn teamwork? I believe that sounds wonderful. At last, everyone turned toward the Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked down at the photograph of Naruko. The little girl in the picture grinned widely, as if she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. She is still very young, he said slowly. The Raikage raised an eyebrow. Young, yes. But she is brave too, I hear. The Takigakure leader nodded. And she should know she is not alone. The Hokage remained silent for a long moment. Then he gave a gentle sigh. Very well, he said at last. On one condition. The Kazekage tilted his head politely. What would that be, Hokage Dono? The first camp will be held in Konoha, the Hokage replied. If the children are coming together for the first time, I want them to feel welcome and safe. Agreed, the Kazekage said immediately. One by one, the other leaders nodded as well. The decision had been made. Several days later, messages were sent across the lands. The first joint training camp of the allied villages will take place in Konoha's forests. It will last 10 days, beginning on the first day of July. The Raikage read the notice aloud in his office before laughing. Well, that's going to be interesting. Kirabai will probably turn the whole thing into a singing contest. One of his attendants smiled. And Yugito? She'll pretend she isn't excited, the Raikage said with a grin. But she'll pack her bag before anyone asks. Far away in Takigakure, the village leader looked toward the bright sky. Please tell Fu about the camp, he said warmly to his attendants. I think she will enjoy meeting children from other villages. Even the usually stern Mizukage tapped the notice with a thoughtful finger. A camp where the children can learn cooperation, he muttered. Very well. Make sure our young ones are prepared. And in Konoha, the Hokage gently placed Naruko's photograph back on his desk. Outside his window, the village bustled with life. Somewhere out there, Naruko was probably running through the streets, laughing loudly and chasing a new adventure. The Hokage smiled softly. 10 days, he said to himself. 10 days for these children to make friends, share stories, and learn from one another. He imagined Naruko standing among the others, meeting new companions, learning new skills, and discovering that the world was much bigger than she had ever known. And perhaps, by the end of the camp, every one of those children would leave with something special. Not just stronger abilities, but stronger hearts. The Hokage had faced many difficult choices throughout his long life as a ninja. He had guided the village through storms of worry and times of great change. Yet today, as he walked slowly across the training yard, he felt this conversation might be one of the hardest he had ever had. He paused for a moment and watched the small playground ahead. There she was. A cheerful blonde girl stood on a wooden swing, trying to push herself higher and higher. She stretched up on her toes, gave a big hop, and held tightly to the chains as the swing soared forward. For a moment she looked triumphant. Then the swing tilted a little too far. And the girl slipped. She tumbled gently into the soft sand with a small thump. The Hokage quietly covered his face with his hand. Owie! The ground is hard. The girl groaned. Otherwise it might crumble under the weight of all the ramen you eat every day, Naruko, the Hokage said kindly. The blonde girl's face lit up instantly. She forgot all about the bump on her nose and jumped to her feet with a huge grin. Oh Jisen! Naruko brushed sand off her clothes and ran over happily. It's been forever. The Hokage smiled warmly. Yes, I'm sorry about that. Being Hokage means there is always a great deal of work to do. Naruko placed her hands behind her head and laughed. Then you should just give the job to me. You're getting old, you know. The old man chuckled and gently ruffled her bright hair. So, Naruko asked, rocking on her heels, what's going on? Well, the Hokage said slowly, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Something quite big. Naruko blinked with curiosity. The Hokage motioned toward the swing she had been using. Let's sit. Naruko hopped onto it and let her legs dangle while she waited. You see, the Hokage began, not long ago I had a meeting with the leaders of the other great ninja villages. Naruko's eyes widened. Wait, there are more leaders like you? The Hokage chuckled softly. Yes, there are 5 villages in the world with leaders called Kage. Each one protects their people in their own land. Naruko made a long thoughtful sound. Oh. We all spoke together, he continued, and we agreed on something special. A gathering where young ninja students from different villages can meet, learn, and train together. Before he could say anything more, Naruko jumped off the swing and started spinning around in excitement. That sounds awesome. I'm totally going. I'm gonna be the best there. The Hokage smiled, but then gently raised his hand. Naruko. That isn't the biggest part of the news. Her dancing slowed. Something in his voice had changed. Naruko turned and looked carefully at his face. He only used that serious tone when something truly mattered. She quietly sat down on the swing again. What is it? The Hokage took a slow breath. Naruko. What I need to tell you is also related to something you've probably wondered about for a long time. She tilted her head. You mean why some villagers act strange around me? The Hokage nodded softly. Naruko lowered her eyes for a moment but stayed very still. You've heard stories about the 9-tailed fox spirit, haven't you? He asked gently. Naruko nodded. Everyone in the village knew the old legend. Long ago, a powerful fox spirit had appeared and caused great confusion and fear. But the 4th Hokage, a hero Naruko admired deeply, had found a way to protect the village. That fox spirit, the Hokage continued, is one of 9 ancient beings called Baijuu. Each one has a different number of tails. Naruko repeated the new word carefully. Yo? Baijuu, the Hokage said kindly. They are made from powerful energy and have existed for a very long time. Naruko leaned forward with curiosity. But the 4th Hokage stopped the 9 tails, right? Yes, the Hokage said. But beings like that cannot simply disappear. Instead, the 4th Hokage found another way to keep the village safe. Naruko thought hard. If you can't make someone go away, you lock them somewhere, she said proudly. The Hokage nodded. That's a very good way of thinking about it. Naruko's eyes sparkled. So the fox spirit was locked up somewhere? Yes, the Hokage said gently. But there was no ordinary place strong enough to hold such a powerful spirit. Naruko frowned in thought. Then where? The Hokage slowly raised his hand and tapped a finger lightly against her forehead. The spirit was sealed. Inside someone. Naruko blinked in surprise. For a moment she simply stared at him. Then the Hokage gave her a warm, reassuring smile. And that someone is you, Naruko. The playground grew quiet for a moment. A breeze rustled the leaves nearby. Naruko looked down at her hands. Then she looked back up. So there's a big fox spirit living inside me? The Hokage nodded gently. But listen carefully, he said kindly. You are not that spirit. You are Naruko, a bright, determined girl with a big heart and an even bigger dream. Naruko thought about this for a long moment. Then, slowly, she grinned. Well, she said proudly, if a legendary fox spirit is inside me, then I guess that just makes me even more awesome. The Hokage laughed, a deep, warm laugh that echoed across the playground. Yes, he thought. Telling her had been difficult. But Naruko Uzumaki still shone just as brightly as ever. Naruko needed less than 10 seconds to connect the dots. Even if she sometimes acted a little silly, she was not any less intelligent than the other children her age. For some reason, understanding this particular mystery had been surprisingly easy for her. She brought her small hands to her chest and felt her heart beating faster. I. The Hokage watched her kindly. I did not tell you before because I wanted you to try to have a normal life, Naruko, he said gently. Sometimes people say that not knowing something can make life simpler. But now that you have decided to become a ninja, it is only fair that you know the truth. Naruko placed her hands on her head and shook it slightly, trying to make sense of everything she had just heard. But if I protect people from harm, why do they dislike me? She asked softly. Shouldn't they be thankful? Instead. The Hokage sighed, though his eyes remained warm. Sometimes people become afraid of things they do not fully understand, he explained. Even though they know that the fourth Hokage sealed the nine-tailed fox inside you to protect the village, some worry that the fox might escape someday. Others imagine things that are not true at all. Naruko slowly raised her head and looked at him. That is not fair, she whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. Somehow, knowing the reason made the lonely feeling even colder. The Hokage rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. Naruko, he said softly, this is a secret among the adults of the village. Children your age do not know about it. If you want to make friends easily, it might be best to keep this information private. But the choice is yours. Naruko sniffed and wiped her eyes. However, the Hokage continued, smiling a little, there are a few special exceptions. Naruko blinked with curiosity. Do you remember what I told you about the Baijuu? He asked. How many there are? 9, Naruko replied after thinking for a moment. That's right. 9 powerful creatures. And each one is sealed inside a different person. Naruko's tears stopped for a moment as surprise filled her face. The Hokage nodded encouragingly. There are other children like you, Naruko. Many of them are around your age. The leaders of the villages have agreed to let you all meet. You mean? They won't dislike me, even if they know? She asked carefully. The Hokage shook his head. They understand what it feels like to carry such a responsibility, he said. Whether you become friends is up to you. But they will understand your situation. Naruko rubbed her eyes and sat up a little straighter. Since this involves an important secret, the Hokage continued, the real reason for the meeting will stay hidden. To everyone else, it will simply be called a training camp. Yes, Ji-san, Naruko said with determination. If anyone asks, I'll say I'm going to a. She puckered her lips as she tried to remember the exact words. A joint training camp with the allied villages of the Leaf, the Hokage reminded her. It begins on the 1st of July, and it will be held here in Konoha. Naruko nodded eagerly. 2 weeks later. Let's review the rules one more time, Naruko, the Hokage said. Naruko puffed out her cheeks. Ji-san, we've gone over them so many times. She replied. But fine. The camp lasts 10 days, and I have to stay there the whole time. I should avoid arguments, and I'm not supposed to show any secret techniques from our village. She paused and scratched her head. Though that last rule is easy, because I don't know any special techniques yet. The Hokage chuckled. Very good. And if you need help, you can speak with the 2 supervisors of the camp, he said. They have more experience and can give you advice. Naruko nodded. And if I can't find them, I can ask the 2 ninjas behind you. She glanced over his shoulder. They're called Dog-san and Owl-san, right? Exactly, the Hokage said with a smile. Naruko turned to look at the large wooden gates in front of her. They were tall and sturdy, almost like a small version of the village walls. What is this place again, Ji-san? She asked. It used to be a training ground for special ninja teams, he explained. It's hidden and protected, so only certain people can find it. Inside there's a courtyard, a few buildings to sleep in, and even a small pond. Naruko nodded thoughtfully. When she turned around again, the 2 masked ninjas had quietly disappeared. She blinked. If I want to talk to them, how do I find them? She asked. The Hokage smiled. They will know when you need them. Then he stepped forward and opened the wooden gates just enough for her to pass through. Well then, he said kindly, have fun, Naruko. I will, Ji-san. Naruko swallowed nervously and tightened the straps of her backpack. She felt a little shy, but also excited. These past weeks had been difficult, but now she had the chance to meet people who might understand her. Taking a deep breath, she walked through the open gates. Behind her, the Hokage gently closed them. I hope these days bring you happiness, Naruko, he said quietly before turning back toward the village. Naruko paused just inside the wooden gate and looked around the training grounds. She had expected something grand, but it was actually quite simple. The courtyard was wide and open, with a few sturdy barracks standing along the edges. Several leafy trees stretched their branches over the ground, offering patches of cool shade. Near one side, she noticed a small pond where the water shimmered softly in the sunlight. But what really caught her attention was the group gathered in the center of the courtyard. Naruko swallowed nervously and started walking toward them, quietly observing everyone one by one. The first person she noticed was a boy about her age sitting cross-legged on the ground. What made him stand out was the small teddy bear resting in his arms and his very unusual hair. It was bright red, the most vivid red Naruko had ever seen. Dark rings circled his eyes, making them look even more striking. Not far from him was the youngest person there, a tiny boy who couldn't have been older than 4. His hair was a pale, silvery color that reminded Naruko of moonlight. His eyes were a soft pink, and he seemed completely focused on a single flower growing between his feet. He crouched quietly, studying it as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. Another girl sat nearby on the steps of one of the barracks. She looked about Naruko's age and had warm tan skin, bright orange eyes, and long aquamarine hair that shone like the sea. She held a small book in her hands and read calmly, turning each page with care. It seemed the children around Naruko's age ended there. The rest were older. One slender boy with black hair stood with his arms crossed. His long bangs covered most of his face, leaving only one eye visible. Even that eye was nearly closed, giving him a calm and thoughtful appearance. He was watching the small pink-eyed boy and the flower with quiet curiosity. Another boy stood a bit farther away, and Naruko blinked in surprise when she saw him. His skin was a deep brown, darker than anyone she had met before, and his hair was pure white like fresh cream. It was tied up in an unusual style that made it bounce slightly when he moved. He wore sunglasses and a bandana around his forehead. With a serious expression, he wrote carefully in a small notebook, as if he didn't want to forget a single detail. The only other girl in the group seemed to love the color black. She wore dark clothes that looked the most like a proper ninja outfit. Her long blonde hair was tied into a neat ponytail, and her lips were a naturally deep shade of pink that almost looked like lipstick. After counting the children, Naruko noticed there were also 2 adults present. One of them had the same red hair as the boy with the teddy bear, though his was darker and a little messy. He looked older, with a calm face and a large marking stretching across his nose and cheeks. He wore brown clothing and tall black boots. At the moment, he sat quietly on a rock beside the pond with his eyes closed, as if enjoying the peaceful air. The other adult was enormous. Naruko had never seen anyone so tall. He stood near a tree with his arms folded, leaning comfortably against the trunk. Most of his body was covered in layered cloth and a set of red armor. Only his brown eyes were visible. On his back was a curious metal device that looked a little like a chimney, and a gentle puff of steam drifted from it every now and then. Naruko felt her heart beating faster. She was excited, but also very nervous. Just then, the red-haired man opened his eyes and looked directly at her. Somehow, everyone else seemed to notice her arrival at the same moment. Naruko raised her hand in a small wave. "Hi," she said softly. "Well," the man said as he stood up from the rock, "it seems everyone is here." The tall armored man stepped away from the tree, and the 2 adults walked toward the center of the courtyard. Without thinking, Naruko moved closer too. The Hokage had told her that these 2 would be supervising the camp. Both adults looked at her first. "I actually thought you would arrive before anyone else," the red-haired man said with a small smile. "After all, you are the host." Naruko lowered her head quickly. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be late." The man gave a small shrug. "It's not a problem. I was just surprised." He then raised his voice a little. "Everyone, gather around." One by one, the children came closer. Some walked quickly, while others took their time. The last to arrive was the boy with the white hair and sunglasses, who reluctantly closed his notebook before stepping forward. When the group had formed a circle, the red-haired man looked at each of them kindly. "First, a quick reminder of the rules," he said. The tall armored man spoke next. His voice sounded slightly muffled through the layers of cloth, but it was steady and clear. "This gathering is meant to help everyone understand one another better," he explained. "However, no one needs to share special techniques from their village. You may keep those private." The children nodded. "We only need simple introductions," he continued. "Just your name and the number of tails of the spirit you host." The red-haired man reached into his pocket and held up a small metal plate from a forehead protector. "My name is Roshi," he said. "I am a ninja from the village hidden in the rocks, and I host the 4-tailed spirit." The tall man nodded. "Han," he said. "I host the 5-tailed spirit." He glanced around the group. "Who would like to go next?" Naruko's nervousness suddenly turned into excitement. She raised her hand high and stepped forward with a bright smile. "I'll go," she said cheerfully. "My name is Uzumaki Naruko. I'm from the Hidden Leaf Village. And I host the 9-tailed fox spirit." For a moment, the group was quiet. Then the dark-skinned boy with the white hair lifted his hand and stretched out 2 fingers in a playful gesture. "Wow," he said with a grin. "That's a lot of tails." Naruko blinked. "Huh?" He destroyed a whole village not because of pillage. It was lucky that it was summer. The warm air hummed with the gentle sound of crickets, which made Naruko's and the green-haired girl's stunned expressions feel even funnier. They both stared at the dark-skinned boy who had just spoken. The boy struck a dramatic pose. "Impressed with my rhyming skills, are you? I'm the killer bee. 8 are my tails, from Kumo I hail." Naruko blinked twice. The girl beside him sighed softly. "His real name is Kirabai," she explained patiently. "And he's the younger brother of the Reikage. I'm from Kumo as well. My name is Yugito, and I host the Two-Tailed Beast." The tall man named Han nodded in acknowledgement before turning toward 2 quiet children standing nearby. They were from Kiri. One of them had soft pink eyes and looked a little distracted, as if he were thinking about something far away. The older boy spoke first. "My name is Utakata," he said politely. "I have the 6-tailed beast." He gently rested a hand on the head of the younger child beside him. "And this is Yagura. He houses the 3-tailed beast." "You're orphans, aren't you?" Roshi asked kindly. The 2 boys nodded. Roshi gave a thoughtful sigh and then turned toward a red-haired boy holding a small teddy bear. Everyone looked at him. The boy smiled nervously. I'm Gaara. Sabaku no Gaara. I'm the Kazekage's son. And I have the 1 tail." And last, but not least, Roshi turned to the final member of their group. A cheerful girl who had been quietly reading a small book suddenly looked up, surprised by the silence around her. "Ah. Sorry, she laughed, rubbing the back of her head. "I really wanted to see how the story continued." She closed the book and tucked it neatly into a pouch. "My name is Fu. I host the 7-tailed beast. I'm from Takigakure. It's nice to meet you all." "Good," Roshi said. "Try to learn everyone's names in these 10 days. Some of you might be staying here for 6 years." The children exchanged puzzled looks. "Oh, right," Roshi added. "This camp is only for those who are not Jinan yet. So Kirabai, you'll only be here this year." "Buzz killer. Filthy filler," Kirabai declared dramatically. The others just stared at him. Most of them had no idea what those words meant. Roshi shrugged. "Now, you'll have 2 hours to explore the place. After that, lunch. And later we'll talk about the training activities you'll do together." He pulled out a paper. Then frowned. "This is my grocery list." Han silently handed him the correct paper. Roshi coughed. "Thank you. Now. Barracks assignments. First barrack, 9, 1, and 3. The children looked confused again. "That means the number of your tails," Roshi explained. Suddenly Naruko grinned brightly. "Then you 2 are with me," she said excitedly. She pointed at Gaara and Yagura. Gaara gave a small, uncertain smile. Yagura simply stared for a moment before turning and calmly walking toward the barrack. Hey! Wait for me," Naruko called, running after him. Second barrack, the 2 ladies, Roshi continued. Fu laughed nervously as she was caught holding her book again. She reached out her hand cheerfully to Yugito, but Yugito had already started walking toward their room. And finally, Roshi finished, the quiet one and the rhyming one. "Yo! Your acquaintance is welcome to me," Kirabai said happily. Utakata simply bowed politely. Soon the younger students disappeared into the barracks. Roshi and Han watched them go. "So," Han asked, folding his arms, "what do you think of them?" Roshi thought for a moment. "They're all just children," he said. "But most of them seem to understand their powers at least a little." He glanced toward one particular barrack. Except the girl from Konoha. Inside, Naruko was trying to turn a stubborn door handle. She pulled. She pushed. She twisted. The door didn't move. Then she slipped and landed on her bottom with a surprised thump. Yagura calmly stepped forward and opened the door with ease. Han chuckled quietly. "I don't think she has been taught much about ninja skills yet." Inside the barrack, Naruko sat cross-legged on her bed, smiling brightly at her new roommates. "So, you're from other villages," she said thoughtfully. "But which ones?" Gaara sat across from her, still holding his teddy bear. "I'm from Sunagakure," he said softly. "The village hidden in the sand." Naruko's eyes widened. Sand? Wow. Is everything made of sand there? The only sand I've seen is in the playground. Gaara looked a little surprised by her excitement, but he smiled. Our village is inside a hollow mountain in the desert, he explained. Naruko tilted her head. Hollow? That means the middle is empty, Gaara said kindly. The mountain forms a big circle around the village. Whoa. That sounds amazing. Naruko then turned to Yagura, who was standing quietly by the window. What about you? Kiri, he said simply. The hidden mist. Naruko frowned. That's it? Yagura didn't answer. Naruko puffed out her cheeks and hopped off her bed. She crawled over beside him and looked out the window. What are you staring at? Outside the window stood a single large yellow flower. Yagura nodded slightly. The flower. Naruko blinked. Okay. Why? It's growing. Naruko stared at the flower for a long moment. Plants grew very slowly. Very slowly. She scratched her head. Then she decided Yagura might just like quiet things. She turned back to Gaara. Hey, wanna go play outside for a while? Gaara looked up in shock. You? Wanna play with me? Naruko nodded. Of course. Why not? Gaara looked down again. My father said. It would be the same here as back home. Naruko tilted her head. What do you mean? Gaara hesitated. People say unkind things. They look at me with cold eyes. They stay far away. Naruko was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke gently. They do that to you too? Gaara slowly nodded. Naruko scratched her cheek. Well, that's not very nice of them. Gaara continued softly. Sometimes when I get upset, I can't control my power. And people get scared. Naruko thought about that for a moment. Then she smiled. Well, if they already know that upsetting you causes problems. And they still upset you. She shrugged. That sounds pretty silly. Gaara looked up in surprise. Silly? Yeah, Naruko said confidently. If someone pokes a beehive and bees come out, they shouldn't act surprised. Gaara blinked. Then, for the first time since arriving at the camp, he laughed quietly. Yes, he said. That does sound silly. Naruko jumped to her feet. See? So let's go play. Gaara hesitated for just a moment. Then he carefully placed his teddy bear on the bed and stood up. For the first time that day, he felt a small bit of courage. And together, the two children stepped outside into the warm sunshine. Naruko laughed brightly and waved her hand. Yeah. So don't worry. Now that I know you could probably hurt him, I'm definitely not going to make you upset. She flashed a cheerful grin and held out her left hand. Gaara looked up at her. For a moment he seemed surprised, as if he wasn't used to someone smiling at him so easily. Then he slowly smiled back and took her hand. A faint blush warmed his cheeks. Well, I don't think I could right now, though, he admitted. Naruko tilted her head. Huh? My abilities work with sand, Gaara explained shyly. But there isn't any sand here. So I can't really use them. Naruko's eyes sparkled. Even better. That means we can go outside and play. Gaara blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected that answer at all. But Naruko was already pulling him toward the door with excited energy. Come on. Let's see what the yard looks like. And before Gaara could protest, the two of them were hurrying outside together, sunlight spilling across the ground as their laughter echoed in the hallway. Break line. Yugito found herself with an unusual problem. She had nothing to do. Back in her village she spent most of her days training. Practice, missions, more practice, her schedule had always been full. The villagers often kept their distance from her, but Yugito had learned long ago not to worry about that. She simply focused on becoming a strong and capable ninja. But now there was quiet time before lunch. She had already explored the entire settlement earlier that morning. Every hallway, every courtyard, every path. Which meant she was out of ideas. Her eyes drifted toward her roommate. Fu sat on her bed with a book in her hands, her bright orange eyes completely focused on the pages. She had been reading for quite a while without even looking up. Yugito watched for a moment before finally speaking. What's that book about? Fu blinked and looked up, startled. It took her a second to realize Yugito had spoken to her. Oh. Sorry, Fu said with a small laugh. I get really absorbed when I read. I noticed, Yugito replied calmly. So, what's the story about? Fu carefully closed the book, placing a small slip of paper between the pages to keep her spot. Then she held the book up proudly. It's called The Legend of the Gutsy Ninja. It's my favorite book ever. Yugito studied the cover. The original title was hidden beneath a sturdy orange protector. And what happens in it? She asked. Fu's face lit up with excitement. It's about a brave ninja who keeps trying no matter how difficult things become, she explained eagerly. She wants to protect the people she cares about and break a mysterious curse. Even when everything seems impossible, she never gives up. Yugito considered that. It sounds nice. Fu beamed. It was clear she was happy just to talk about it. Do you want to read it? She asked suddenly. Before Yugito could answer, Fu had already turned around and started digging through her backpack. Oh, don't worry, Yugito said quickly. I wouldn't want to take your book. Nah. It's okay, Fu said cheerfully. She pulled out another book and placed it directly into Yugito's hands. Yugito blinked. It was exactly the same. Why do you carry 2 copies? She asked slowly. Fu grinned. Just to be safe. Yugito stared at the book for a moment. Something told her this might turn into a very unusual afternoon. Break line. Across the hall, another conversation was happening. Kirabai leaned forward eagerly. Hey! What's it like where you come from? Is it exciting? Utakata looked slightly puzzled. Could you speak a little more clearly? He asked politely. I'm not sure I understand you. Kirabai paused mid-sentence. His mouth stayed open for a moment as he thought. Finally he sighed and crossed his arms dramatically. I guess my amazing style isn't understood everywhere. Utakata gave a small, patient smile. Maybe there are times for creative speaking, he said, and times for simple speaking. Kirabai chuckled. You sound just like my big brother. How old are you anyway? 9. Kirabai blinked. 9? And you already talk like that? That's kind of surprising. Utakata thought quietly before answering. My village expects us to grow up quickly, he said. Kirabai nodded thoughtfully. He had heard stories about Utakata's homeland and knew training there could be very strict. While Kirabai was thinking, Utakata reached into his bag and pulled out a long pipe. What's that? Kirabai asked curiously. Utakata lifted the pipe to his mouth and gently blew. A stream of shiny bubbles floated into the air. Kirabai stared in amazement. You're making bubbles? It's an exercise I practice every day, Utakata explained calmly as more bubbles drifted upward, sparkling in the light. Kirabai leaned back on his bed, watching them float around the room. Well, he said with a grin, that's definitely the most interesting exercise I've seen today. The bubbles drifted quietly through the air, and for a moment the room felt peaceful and calm, like a place where new friendships might slowly begin. After the time of getting acquainted with the territory, in a way that reminded Naruko more of how curious puppies explored a new yard than how people usually behaved, it was finally time for lunch. To Naruko's great surprise, lunch had been set right in the middle of the courtyard. Waiting there was a very large table, one of those picnic tables where the benches and the table were built together. Naruko had seen something like it once before in a park and had thought it was the coolest kind of table ever. Now she thought so again. But the table was not the most exciting thing. Half of the meal waiting for them was made up of bowls of ramen. Ramen, Naruko shouted with delight. Her happy cry echoed across the courtyard. The shout was so enthusiastic that 2 hidden Onbu guards from Kirigakure suddenly appeared from their hiding spots, ready for trouble. They looked around quickly, only to discover that the supposed enemy Naruko had called out was simply her favorite food. The guards quietly disappeared again. Meanwhile, Naruko had already started eating. The other Jinchūriki watched with wide eyes as bowl after bowl of ramen seemed to vanish into Naruko's stomach. It was well known that Jinchūriki had faster metabolisms than most people and often needed more food. Still, the amount Naruko managed to eat was astonishing. Even Han, who was usually very quiet, could only stare in amazement. Finally, Naruko leaned back on the bench and patted her stomach. Woo! I'm stuffed, she said happily. Strangely enough, her stomach did not look full at all. It was as if it were a bottomless pit. Most of the others had already finished their much smaller meals. Naruko's speed at eating had been just as impressive as the amount she ate. Glad to know it, Roshi said with a small smile as he set his chopsticks aside and scratched the top of his head. Since everyone was gathered peacefully at the table, He decided it was a good moment to begin the first lesson. He had been thinking about how to explain things in a simple way. Well, Roshi said, taking a calm breath, I suppose it's time that Han and I keep our part of the deal. Everyone at the table turned their attention toward him. Fu finished the last of her food while still doing something else at the same time. She seemed to be reading while eating. But first, Roshi continued, we would like to ask a few questions. Han nodded. The first question is this, how many years have you been aware of your situation? He asked. Naruko felt a small shiver run through her shoulders, though she tried not to show it. Gaara spoke first. I was 2 years old, he said calmly. My uncle told me. 2 years old for me as well, Yugito said. And the same goes for Killer Bee. Yagura remained quiet, but Utakata spoke for both of them. We were told as soon as we were old enough to understand what it meant. Roshi nodded thoughtfully. That meant they had learned very young. Then he looked at Fu. 4 years old, I think, she said, tapping a finger against her lips as she tried to remember. Finally, everyone looked at Naruko. She hesitated for a moment. She began nervously. After a few seconds, she answered honestly. They told me. 2 weeks ago. Roshi blinked in surprise. It was the first time since meeting the children that he looked truly shocked, well, aside from seeing how much ramen Naruko could eat. He sighed softly. All right, he said. From the way your chakra feels and from what you've told me, I can tell who has already received some training and who has not. He paused for a moment. But believe me when I say this, you will not find better teachers for this subject than Han and me. Your villages have only stories and guesses to rely on. We have years of real experience. Han continued the explanation. The first thing you must understand is that there is no single way to deal with every tailed beast, he said. In that way, the Baijuu are like people. Each one has its own personality, and each one likes and dislikes different things. Roshi nodded. And another very important thing, he added, gently puffing on a small handmade cigar that produced little clouds of smoke shaped like tiny animals and swirls. A Baijuu's power is not unbeatable. There are many skilled ninja in the world who can stand toe-to-toe with a tailed beast without having one themselves. He looked around at the young Jinchūriki. So you might ask, what is the benefit of being a Jinchūriki? What good does the power of a Baijuu do for us? Han answered that question. One thing all Baijuu share is that they are like enormous batteries of chakra, he said. The more tails a Baijuu has, the more chakra it contains. Yugito raised an eyebrow. Wait, she said. Does that mean that 2 tails has one of the smaller amounts of chakra? Yes, Roshi replied with a nod. But remember, having more chakra does not automatically mean someone will win a battle. Skill, wisdom, and teamwork matter just as much. He spun his cigar playfully on his finger, as if it were a small stick. The Baijuu give you chakra and sometimes special abilities. But it is still up to you to use that power wisely. Even the sharpest blade is useless if the person holding it does not know what to do. Special abilities? Naruko asked with bright curiosity. Like what? Good question, Roshi said. For example, my Baijuu gave me something similar to a unique Kekkei Genkai. Naruko blinked. She had no idea what that meant. Fu raised her hand helpfully. Kekkei Genkai are special ninja powers that can't be learned, right? She said. Han nodded. Exactly. They are abilities that come from a person's bloodline. They are not ordinary techniques. He continued the explanation. Ninja techniques are often based on 5 main elements: fire, water, wind, earth, and lightning. Some rare bloodlines allow a person to combine 2 of those elements to create something completely new. That is the kind of ability I gained from my Baijuu, Roshi finished. Naruko's eyes shone with admiration. Wow. Roshi smiled slightly. Sadly, I do not know exactly what abilities the other Baijuu may grant. But there is one final thing you should understand. There are 2 ways to use a Baijuu's chakra, Han said. 2 ways? Naruko repeated. Han crossed his arms. The first way is simple. You draw on the Baijuu's chakra the same way you would use your own. You can strengthen your techniques or make your body stronger. He paused. And the strengthening effect of Baijuu chakra is usually much greater than normal chakra. Roshi continued. The second way is different, he said. Instead of simply borrowing the chakra, you allow it to surround and flow through your body more completely. When that happens, your strength increases greatly, and a cloak of chakra may appear around you, shaped like your Baijuu. The younger Jinchūriki blinked in surprise. You begin with one tail, Roshi explained. And as more tails appear, your power increases. Wow! That sounds amazing, Naruko said excitedly. Roshi raised a finger. But it also comes with risks. He gently put out the last bit of his cigar while Han continued. Baijuu chakra is very powerful, Han said. The human body can only handle so much of it safely. He looked at the group carefully. Usually, up to 3 tails of power can be handled without serious harm. But beyond that, the chakra becomes more dangerous to your body. Several of the children swallowed nervously. So if you ever face a very strong opponent, Roshi advised kindly, and you must use more power, it is sometimes wiser to finish the challenge quickly rather than staying in that state for a long time. Han nodded. And there is one more risk, he added. Naruko listened closely. Some Baijuu are very stubborn and strong-willed, he said. They may try to take control of the Jinchūriki's mind. The more their power is used, the harder it can be to stay in control. Roshi stood up from the table. That is enough for today, he said warmly. Take some time to think about what you have learned. Tomorrow, we will begin the real lessons. Naruko raised her hand quickly. Roshi-ji-chan? I have a question. Roshi paused and turned back. Yes? Naruko scratched the back of her head sheepishly. I think I missed something, she admitted. What exactly is chakra? 5 people immediately toppled forward onto the table with a loud thump. The ground trembled so much that the hidden Onbu guards briefly appeared again to see what had happened. Roshi rubbed his sore nose and sighed. It seemed that Naruko might be the first Jinchūriki in history who had not yet learned the very basics of ninja training. But then again, she was also the first person who had ever successfully held the 9 tails inside her. And Roshi had a feeling that teaching Naruko was going to be a very interesting adventure. Eh? The long echo of surprise bounced around the trees as the children stared at Roshi. Naruko was the loudest of all. She held her stone in both hands and looked from it to Roshi, then back again as if hoping it might suddenly become lighter. You mean, we have to hop all the way back? Naruko asked, blinking in disbelief. Roshi nodded calmly, still balanced in his crouched position. Hop. Hop, he repeated with a cheerful grin. Kirabai laughed and easily lifted his stone onto one shoulder. Sounds like fun to me, he said. Yugito sighed, though a small smile appeared on her face. I suppose there is no point arguing. Fu giggled as she hugged her stone close. This is going to look very silly. It already does, Utakata said gently, though his voice carried a quiet amusement. Naruko puffed out her cheeks. Fine. If that's what it takes to get breakfast, I'll do it. She crouched like Roshi had shown them, tucked her arms behind her back, and tried her first hop. Hop. The stone wobbled. Naruko wobbled. For a moment it looked like she might tip over, but she steadied herself just in time. I did it, she said proudly. Then she tried another hop. Hop. Behind her, Gaara carefully lifted his stone and followed. His movements were quiet and precise, as if he were solving a puzzle with every hop. Yagura made a small hop and laughed at the odd feeling of bouncing instead of walking. Soon the forest path was filled with a very unusual sight, 7 young trainees hopping along with stones in their arms while Roshi guided them forward like a patient teacher leading a game. Remember, Roshi called back to them, steady breathing. Don't rush. Naruko nodded determinedly. Hop. 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 After a few minutes, everyone's breathing became deeper. Their legs started to feel the work, but the morning air was fresh and cool. Sunlight slipped between the tall trees and painted bright patches along the path. Fu began counting her hops out loud. 23. 24. 25. Kirabai started humming a playful rhythm to match the hopping. Yugito shook her head with a laugh. Now it really feels like a strange parade. Naruko grinned widely. This is the weirdest training ever, she said. But it's kind of fun. Step by step, or rather hop by hop, the group made their way back through the forest. When the wooden gate of the camp finally came into view, several of the watchful shinobi standing nearby looked up in surprise. For a moment they simply stared. Then one of them chuckled. The children, tired but proud, continued hopping toward the entrance. Naruko raised her stone high and shouted triumphantly, "Breakfast, here we come." Roshi laughed warmly as he watched them. Yes, he said. Breakfast well earned. Naruko had first believed that the old man must be a little out of his mind. The exercise had sounded completely ridiculous when he explained it. But now she was beginning to wonder if she herself had lost her mind for agreeing to it. Her arms felt as if they might fall off at any moment. Hopping while carrying a heavy stone in her hands was not easy at all. Earlier, the group had zigzagged through the trees from the camp, and that alone had taken about 30 minutes. Now it felt as if they had been hopping back for nearly an hour. The first to move far ahead of everyone was Killer Bee, or Kirabai, as the others sometimes called him. He was the oldest and the strongest among them. Not long after him came Utakata, followed by Yugito Ni. Even though Yugito did not look as muscular as the first two, she was still older than many of the others. Soon the tall wooden gates of the camp came into view. Only a few remained behind. Naruko hopped beside Gaara. A short distance ahead of them was Fu, while little Yagura was struggling behind them. "Anth. Come. On," Naruko murmured, focusing on the small distance left. Compared to everything they had already done, it was not very far. Still, her arms and legs felt sore. Fu was feeling just as tired. She almost wanted to sit down right where she was. But each time she thought about stopping, she remembered the brave hero from her favorite book, a ninja who never gave up. If he didn't quit, she whispered to herself, then I won't either. When she saw the camp gates only 50 meters away, she found a burst of energy. She hopped faster and faster until she crossed through the gates at last. The moment she reached the camp, she carefully set her stone down and lay beside it on the grass. "Anth. Anth. Done." "Well done, Fu," said Roshi kindly. "You may rest as long as you like." Nearby, Yugito and Utakata were still catching their breath. Kirabai had already recovered a bit and was standing calmly. Roshi looked back toward the path. 3 more to go, he said quietly. Meanwhile, Naruko and Gaara kept hopping forward. "I'm hungry and tired," Gaara said softly. Naruko understood exactly how he felt, but she gave him an encouraging smile. "Don't worry," she said. "We're almost there. Just keep jumping." Suddenly, they heard a loud thud behind them. Both of them turned around. Yagura had collapsed onto the ground, leaning against his stone. He was breathing quickly and looked very exhausted. "Hey! Are you okay?" Naruko asked. Roshi observed the scene calmly. Yagura was the youngest among them, after all. Before anyone else could say anything, Naruko placed her own stone down and walked back to him. "Wait," Roshi called. "Naruko, what are you doing?" "You said we all have to make it back before breakfast," Naruko replied. The other children watched in surprise as she gently helped Yagura onto her back. She guided his arms around her shoulders so he would not slip. Then she bent down and tried to lift both stones. She struggled for a moment. "NNNGH. Hold tight," she said. Yagura blinked, realizing what she was trying to do. Roshi raised an eyebrow. "Naruko, you know that isn't part of the rules." "She's tired," Naruko replied quickly. "I'll just hop with her." With great effort, she managed to lift both stones. Roshi was impressed. The determination in her eyes was stronger than the weight in her hands. "Run," he said at last. Naruko looked up. "Huh?" "Run straight here," Roshi explained. "You get one chance. If you stop, you'll have to hop again." Naruko did not hesitate. "Ah!" she shouted as she ran forward. The children near the gate quickly stepped aside as she rushed toward them. Just as she reached the entrance, she stumbled forward and tumbled across the line. The stones dropped onto the ground with a thump. Naruko landed on the grass face first, breathing heavily. For a moment, everyone stared in surprise. Roshi folded his arms thoughtfully. Even after such effort, Naruko was simply tired rather than completely exhausted. Fu hurried over and gently tapped Naruko's shoulder. "Hey, are you okay?" Naruko rolled onto her side. "I'm okay," she said with a small laugh. "My arms and legs just hurt a lot." Utakata helped Yagura climb down from her back. The little child looked at Naruko for a moment. "Thank you, Naruko-san." Utakata blinked in surprise. Yagura rarely said more than a few words. Naruko simply grinned. "You're welcome." Nearby, Kirabai was quietly scribbling something into a notebook. It looked like he had just thought of a new rhyme. Roshi clapped his hands once. "All right, everyone. Gaara, you're the last one." Gaara blinked, realizing everyone was looking at him. "Oh. Right." He began hopping quickly toward the camp. As he did, Roshi stroked his beard thoughtfully. Watching Naruko had given him an interesting idea for future exercises. But that was something to think about later. After Gaara finally arrived, everyone gathered around a wooden table in the middle of the camp. As Roshi expected, the younger students were very hungry. Plates were quickly filled, and cheerful chatter filled the air. Just so you know, Roshi said, we will do this exercise every morning. After breakfast, we'll visit the nearby stream and catch fish for lunch. Most of the children were too busy eating to respond, but they nodded while chewing. Roshi chuckled quietly. Soon they reached the sparkling stream that flowed near the camp. Here we are, kids. Let's splash. Naruko and Kirabai jumped straight into the water. The others followed, though a little more carefully. The cool stream felt wonderful after a long morning of exercise. Roshi smiled as he watched them enjoy themselves. Gaara was the last to step into the water. He seemed a little unsure about it. Naruko noticed and gently pulled his arm. Come on, she said. Before long, they were splashing water playfully. Kirabai joined them, laughing loudly. Utakata and Yagura tried splashing too, discovering it was quite fun. Meanwhile, Yugito and Fu relaxed on the grassy bank. Yugito stretched out in the sunshine with a happy sigh. Fu sat beside her, happily reading her book. Back in the water, Kirabai wiped droplets from his face. Hey, Utakata, he said. How are you so good at splashing? I think I swallowed more water than I splashed. Utakata smiled mysteriously but did not answer. Then Yagura quietly pointed toward the water near Naruko's feet. Fish. Several shiny fish were swimming around her ankles. Naruko looked down and laughed. Well, she said brightly, looks like lunch might be closer than we thought. The afternoon breeze rustled the leaves around the quiet pond. The group of young ninja trainees sat in a circle, listening carefully to Roshi and Han. Naruko, who had been called Naruto before, sat with her legs crossed, her bright eyes shining with curiosity. She brushed a few strands of her golden hair behind her ear and leaned forward eagerly. Visit? Our demons? Fu repeated softly, tilting her head. Han nodded calmly. Yes. Do not be afraid of the word. Inside each of you lives a powerful spirit. For many years people called them demons, but they are also ancient creatures with thoughts and feelings of their own. If you wish to use their chakra wisely, you must first learn to understand them. Naruko raised her hand quickly. So, we actually talk to them? In a manner of speaking, Roshi replied with a gentle chuckle. Your mind is like a door. Normally it stays closed. But with patience and practice, you can open it just a little and step inside the place where your spirit companion lives. Kirabai scratched his head. Whoa! Like a dream world? Something like that, Han said. But it requires focus. No rushing. Naruko sat up straighter. She loved new challenges. I want to try. The other children murmured with interest. Even Gaara looked up slightly from his teddy bear, listening closely. Roshi clapped his hands once. Good. But first we will learn to quiet our thoughts. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and imagine the sound of the pond. The group obeyed. The gentle ripple of water and the soft chirping of birds filled the air. Naruko closed her eyes. At first her thoughts bounced everywhere like playful rabbits. She wondered what the spirit inside her looked like. Was it really a fox like Roshi had suggested? Did it talk? Did it like fish? She took a deep breath, trying to follow Roshi's instructions. Slowly, the sounds of the forest became clearer. The wind. The water. The leaves. Very good, Roshi said quietly. When your thoughts slow down, you may begin to sense something deeper inside. Naruko felt something warm in her chest, like a small glowing lantern. It wasn't scary. It felt strong and lively, almost like it was curious about her too. She opened one eye slightly and peeked at the others. Yugito sat perfectly still, as calm as a statue. Utakata looked thoughtful. Fu had a peaceful smile on her face. Gaara, however, looked worried. Naruko gently scooted closer to him and whispered, Hey! It's okay. We're all here. Gaara blinked and looked at her. After a moment, he nodded slowly. Roshi noticed but didn't interrupt. Instead he said, Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Friendship and trust make the path easier. After several quiet minutes, Roshi told them they could open their eyes. Naruko stretched her arms above her head. Whoa! That was harder than running laps. Kirabai laughed. But kinda cool too. Han stood and looked at the sky, where the sun had begun to drift toward the horizon. For today, that is enough, he said kindly. Learning to meet your spirit companions will take time. But you have already taken the first step. The children relaxed and began chatting excitedly. Naruko looked back at the calm surface of the pond. The warm feeling inside her was still there, like a tiny spark waiting to grow brighter. She smiled to herself. All right, she said, jumping to her feet. Tomorrow I'm definitely figuring out what my fox spirit is like. Fu giggled. Maybe it likes stories. Or naps in the sun, Yugito added with a playful grin. Naruko laughed along with them. The camp felt warm and friendly, like a big family learning something wonderful together. For a few peaceful days, the lessons continued. The young ninja practiced focusing their thoughts, sharing meals, and exploring the forest around the pond. They laughed often and helped each other whenever someone struggled. But one quiet night, when the moon rose high above the trees, something unexpected would happen. A strange disturbance would appear near the camp. And Naruko and her friends would soon discover that their teamwork and kindness would be needed more than ever. Dear YouTube family, this is all for now. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support the journey and stay connected for more content in the future. Thank you for watching and being part of the community. Regards. Anime Octopus.